Oh. Welcome everybody. Greg Peterson coming to you from my new front yard at the yet unnamed farm in North Carolina. And I'm with Janis. Hello, Janis.
Hey, Greg, maybe we should have a name for suggestions, a contest for suggestions for
Yeah,
your.
I suggested that to Heidi and she laughed at me and she said, I'm not going to let somebody else pick the name of
Well,
my farm.
maybe some suggestions will come through that might generate your inspiration,
There you go.
There you go.
Awesome.
I'm Janis Norton. I'm coming from my little urban farm in North Peoria, which is kind of the greater Phoenix area. I've named my farm Two Peace, as in like namaste peace, in a pod. And this is what's behind me, my little section of my little urban farm. And the amazing green in my space is exactly what I need at this time with everything that's going on and so much stress in the world.
Yeah.
Being able to go out into my yard and just enjoy the presence of nature. And I've got a herd of lizards living in my yard.
Nice.
It is so amazing to go out and to see them crisscrossing the yard and going up the wall. Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah, the interesting thing about living here, the life that lives here, frogs and salamanders, and we have a little puddle out front. Literally, they filled in a fish pond here, and I'm unfilling the fish pond. Probably not going to be a fish pond, but we left a puddle about that size in the fish pond, and it got water in it from rain, and 3 days later there were tadpoles in it. It was like the life here is just mind-blowing.
Well, if you look for it, it's there. Here in Arizona, people think that there's not that much life, but there really is.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure.
There really is. And I have a fun joke with Raymond that, he has an exterminator that takes care of the front part of the yard, and the exterminator's name is Chuck. And I said, hey, I got Chuck too. I got a whole lot of Chucks. They're all just Chuck Wallas.
There you go. So we got, let's see here. Jewel says we wouldn't be naming it. You would just want to select one, not draw a name and be stuck with it. Good point. I will bring that up with her. Bill says, separate topic, but my mid-pride peach harvest seems to be benefiting from foliar feeding. Yeah, absolutely. Foliar feeding is where it's at. So shall we get started with the PowerPoint before I co-op this whole thing?
Let's get started.
And questions go in the
That's part of my slides
button, the Q&A button, bottom right.
That's part of the slides, Greg.
Oh, very good. Okay, cool.
It's June's Tree Chat with Greg and myself, and we're talking about extreme heat and fruit trees in the desert. And we've invited Scott Murray to join us. He'll be joining us about 1:30. So we're going to be able to tackle some of the questions with his expertise. As always, put the questions in the Q&A. There's a little button down at the bottom. Go ahead and grab that, throw them there. Between Greg and Scott and myself, we will be able to make sure we go through as many as possible.
That's what we're here for. You know what, before we get off of that one, what was the last slide? Oh, hold on. No, that was it. You actually read my mind on the next slide. These live tree chats are free to join. They are. We do on the second Tuesday, a tree chat, on the third Tuesday, a seed chat, and on the fourth Tuesday of the month, a garden chat. We're going to ask for support at the end of this webinar tonight, either in the case of a donation, or we do have a patron program. So I just want to give you a heads up. We're trying to figure out how to make things, make ends meet here. And so we put together some programs that I will share with you at the end.
And keep it going. All right, so here's our question that we tackle every month. Do I fertilize, and how? So in June, you will definitely do drench feeding once a month, 1 to 3 ounces of heart in 5 gallons of water for each fruit tree. And basically you prepare it in a bucket, pour it around the basin of the tree, and then you follow with your regular deep watering. We have been doing that here at 2 Piece in a Pod every month, and the trees love it, and the grapevines love it, and the potatoes love it, and the flowers love it, and the soil is so gorgeous. And apparently my lizards like it too, so it's really good.
And just saying, Bill says, my mature mid-pride peach harvest seems to be benefiting from foliar feeding, and foliar feeding, part of our system is the drench feeding. And the difference between drench and foliar, drench, you pour it on the roots and around the soil. Foliar feeding gets sprayed on the tree.
Right. Now, foliar feeding is spraying on the leaves of the tree, the foliage, and you can only do it, well, you can do it anytime you want, but it's best to do it 1 to 2 times a month between the temperatures of 65 to 80. Now, in the mornings, you can do it as long as the temps are below 85, and that's the maximum efficiency of being able to absorb this foliar liquid. If you are going to do it anytime beyond that, it's not going to be as effective. It's still going to be soaked in some, but it's just a little too warm for the trees to take it. So we just say, you can do it, save your money, stick to the drenching, and you'll be fine. Don't bother doing it in the evenings. It's too warm. The trees, because what Sol does is it activates the stomata, and it helps the tree open up to start to take in the liquids, but it's also helping the breathing process that the tree does. And it's the wrong time for the tree to be doing that. So just don't do it.
So for clarity though, hold on here. Evenings is too warm in the low desert.
In the low desert.
There's a lot of people here that aren't in the low desert. And so really the point is that you want to foliar feed when it's below 85 degrees, because outside right now it's about 79 degrees where I'm at.
That's true.
And it's 8 o'clock at night. And so it would be a perfect time to go out and foliar feed. So
true. 90% and maybe changing, about 90% of the people who listen are here from the Southwest Desert. Mm-hmm. So my brain went there. Greg's right.
Yeah,
we have expanded beyond that. So for those of you who are outside of the area, the best temperatures are between 65 to 80 degrees. And what do we recommend? We recommend a cap full of essence and 3 capfuls of Sol in a gallon of water. And that's about 7 milliliters, 5 to 7 milliliters per cap. And mix that up real well and then spray it on the tops and bottoms of the leaves, branches, and trunk. Avoid sunlight, high heat, and freezes. If you happen to get a freeze in June, we're all in trouble.
You're not in Phoenix.
Right. All right, so extreme temperatures. This slide we had last month, and it was what I had gone outside and taken a temperature of. Now, I was unable to download this picture of today's temperatures, but I will tell you that when I went outside to get today's temperatures, it was 151 degrees on that same spot.
Yeah.
151 degrees. So you know that it's going to take a lot of cooling in order to cool down that ground for plants. And then we have the soft mulch in my backyard, 136. Today it was 145. So you're dropping it a little bit to get down below that. And again, that second picture there is only about 6 inches. It's about 6 inches down through my mulch to get to 92. So that is a 50 degree temperature drop in 6 inches of mulch. Mm-hmm. It is making a difference to protect your ground, protect your roots. And this was in my backyard, in the orchard underneath some trees. And my picture right now that I couldn't download, it was starting at, well, I have 2 different pictures. The one where it was nice and shady and very green. Now the exact same picture, same place, was 141 degrees.
Wow.
So, or maybe I was probably in a little bit more in the sun, but my green mulch underneath the tree was only 93 to start. So
Wow.
now for those of you who are outside of Phoenix, we get toasty and it gets the sun shining on our ground and our mulch here in Phoenix with no moisture unless you're bringing it in is just gets hot and fast. And that's why extreme tree care is the topic today.
Yeah. Well, and wherever you're at, what you want to do is you want to be building soil like happens in a forest. So in a forest, the leaves fall, sticks, branches break, and over time you get layer after layer after layer of mulch that gets built up. What we're proposing around all fruit trees, really, wherever you live, is a good 6 inches of woody mulch in the base and around the fruit trees so that the soil starts building like a forest. Even here where I'm at, people commented in my YouTube videos that, wow, great soil, when in reality we have this dense clay. It's a red clay in our, and it requires lots and lots of organic matter, which I've been doing. Yep.
Organic matter is the cycle. It's the solution that nature created in order to rejuvenate soil.
Amen
so
to that.
Don't fight it. Follow the path that already works. And this is a
Lauren,
little path in my yard.
Hold on one sec. Lauren has her hand up. We haven't figured out how to use the hand up on Zoom yet, Lauren. And she is asking what heart, essence, and soul is. We're getting there. We'll promise we'll tell you what that is.
I don't have a slide, so we can jump to that. But here's some flowers in my yard. They bring shade, they bring beauty. These are the Mexican primrose that I am allowing to grow free and natural. They are going to be probably fill my whole backyard, and I'm going to love it because it's so pretty looking out and seeing those underneath the trees. It's this and sweet potatoes. All right. So before we get to the story of a little peach tree, let's quickly, I'm going to jump back to the foliar program. In the foliar program that we have, we talk about essence and soul, noble gills, and heart. Can you see my pointer, Greg?
Yes.
Okay, good. These 4 products are the 4 liquid amendments that we swear by. We have adapted these into our own programs and our own personal yards, and the results are phenomenal. We have had other presentations with Anthony just last month. He was in our garden chat from High Creations. Anthony and his partner Derek are scientists, biochemists who have developed a line of nutrient formulas specifically for plants, for amending plants that are being grown. They have a kelp emulsion, a fish emulsion, and 2 acids, soul and heart, and a humic acid and a fulvic acid. And these are this combination of products is what we recommend. So if you have any more questions about all of that, we do have other webinars. We can go in depth on that.
So I just posted a link to our website for that. So you can go to our store and see all the foliar supplies. I will also, while you share about the next slide, I will also post last month's garden chat from YouTube. So people can go back and watch it. Yep.
Because it's good for not just your trees, it's also good for your
gardens, everything.
Gardens, right?
Anything that's growing, especially in this extreme heat.
So we had a regular listener. His name is Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Sent in a little story about his peach tree. So I had this open, and then my computer had to shut down. So hold on a minute while I open this up again. There we go.
We can see your screen.
You can see one screen, but I'm going to a different screen for my notes. Okay. I have 3 screens. I do. I have 3 screens. I love it. All right. So in February 2021, Bill planted an Eva's Pride peach tree according to the urban farm directions there. So you can see this nice big basin and, way far back away from the roots, and happy tree there. He said he actually whitewashed the trunk a little bit, Greg, and he applied 6 inches of mulch.
Nice.
And right in the
So
center.
this is what happens. This is what happens when people follow the directions that we give them about planting their trees. Just saying.
Now, in the middle here, in order to help keep some of the mulch away from the trunk of the tree, because you don't want mulch resting on the tree. If it gets wet, it can create the wrong conditions, and you can create mold and fungi and that are the wrong kind of stuff, bacteria. And it could be draining from the life of the tree. So he used a nursery pot, cut out the bottom and put it right in the center there to help keep the mulch away from the tree. Then just a few months later, the tree's sprouting up to life, and he's got, he pruned it a little bit at planting, and you can see the really good leafing out. This is a slightly different angle from the other one. And he's popped up some PVC poles, getting ready. Good job for the shade, because we talked about that last year. Then in May, it's continuing to leaf out. You can kind of see it in there. And this shade cloth is 50% shade cloth on the top and on the south, east, and west sides. He left the north side open, so you can see the north side open there.
One of the things, Bill, I might suggest is taking it off on the east side and just shade the south and west side. A few years ago, I did something like this, and it cooked the tree because it acted like a little bit of a greenhouse, even with shade cloth. So I always suggest having 2 sides open.
Yeah, well, at least he's got the one side.
Yep.
But look at this. Right here in the middle here is about the height of the tree in May. And then in September, look how gorgeous it is. Up, wow. Tall, growing. Nice. He's got really smart with the water bottles to help secure everything.
Yeah, I saw that and giggled. That's a cool idea. Yeah.
Now, these little things right here, these are some brand new clips that are semicircles that hold the shade cloth down. I've seen these popping around in different places, and isn't that awesome? So that it helps, just pops right onto your PVC. You can get them probably at your hardware store.
I just posted the foliar feed class in the chat.
And he's really excited about the growth that happened over summer.
Oh, yeah.
So then I jumped over, to February. And this is after it went to sleep over the winter. He did a good dormant prune to promote the growth. And I love the structure that he's got right there. A little bit taller, so he's obviously going for a tree structure, but he's got some space in there. And look, it's already popping out flowers. I love that when the flowers start popping out. And then in March, it's starting to leaf out again. Isn't that exciting?
Oh, yeah.
That is so exciting to see that first burst of green.
Now, are we sure that this was a February 21 planting?
Yes.
Not a February 22 planting?
Nope, because now it's February 22 is the first year after he planted it.
Got it. Cool.
So this is a year after he planted it. And then we got February and March. And then we've got some more branching out in April. The fruit were setting in at this point, and he said he removed the majority of them, just left a few so that he can taste them close to the trunk and not far out by the edges, which is really smart.
I have to say something here. I got pictures from Lily, Scott's daughter, Scott Murray, who you're going to hear from here in a little while. And they planted a bunch of trees last January. And they're harvesting peaches off of them. Now, what I know is that they are religious about foliar feeding, about the Dosatron. A Dosatron releases fertilizer in the watering system.
It's a fertigation system, yeah.
It's a liquid fertilizing system. I know that they planted the trees right. So now they are in San Diego. so it's not nearly as hot. But once again, if you can do your foliar, do your fertilizing, do your planting correctly, you're gonna get fruit faster, no matter where you
because your
live.
tree is going to be stronger. It'll be able to handle it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is
And
amazing.
I really like what he says here. He says that he left a few close to the trunk.
Mm-hmm.
So that is really crucial, that especially on these young peach trees, that you don't have all your peaches out on the end because they get so heavy that these little branches just can't handle them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got pictures from one of our clients in Palm Springs. And
Yeah.
you know, his trees, Brent, his trees are doing great. And the branches were all too long. I said, all the fruits come out. That's okay. I told him to cut them back, 30%. So if you got a 3-foot branch, cut back a foot.
To 2 feet.
Yep, cut it back to 2 feet. And that way it's putting energy in growing the roots and trunk of the tree rather than all these branches that you're going to prune off next winter.
Right. And here he says this
Oh, no, we already looked at that one.
May,
oh, there we go. Mm-hmm.
He's starting to get his system ready. And this is about right when he started to put the shade cloth up. Then this is June. It's so full in that shade structure. Look how gorgeous that is. And you can see the peaches. Yep. Now he did put some bird netting to the north side to just kind of act as a deterrent because the birds were going in and getting his peaches. I know that feeling. And his plan is to grow it the next year without the shade cloth so that the trees had 2 years to acclimate.
Yep. There you go.
There you go. All right, so we're opening up to questions right now. We're going to try and take some questions before Scott turns on.
Actually, I want you to go to the next slide. Por favor. Okay, so we're going to ask that you support us in some way. We do a lot of free content constantly. I have to. It's just what I do, and I suspect I can say the same thing about Janis. It's just, she has to too. We're out to change the food system on this planet. In fact, in 1991, I created a vision for myself that I'm the person on the planet responsible for transforming our global food system. And so that's what I work toward every day. And it takes money to bring you this content to make sure that we can pay our bills. And so we've got a couple of different ways that you can support us. That you can just give us a one-time donation if you'd like. If you go to urbanfarm.org/support, you can give us a donation there. We also have a monthly educational patron program. We have over 700 podcast episodes that we've put out over the past 7 years. Can you believe it's been 7 years, Janis? Right? With rock stars like Jason Mraz and Joel Salatin and oh my gosh,
so many more.
So many. David Holmgren, the co-founder of permaculture, was on my podcast, and that was a score. And when I get people like that, literally, I just let them talk. Mm-hmm. And I think we got at least 2 out of each of those people that I just mentioned. And so the first level of our patron program is $10 a month, and it gives you access to the first 650 episodes of our podcast. And the second layer of our program is $25 a month, and that gives you 2 free classes a month that we give. It's like on humanure or on making cheese, or we have a bunch of classes that we've recorded over the years that we're bundling that way for you. So if you could support us in one of these ways, that would be great. The other way you can support us is buying stuff out of our fruit tree shopping cart. And Janis can put the information there. Yeah, perfect. All right. Thank you for letting me do that, Miss Janis.
I will do that.
Sue wants to know, is there such thing as too deep of woody mulch? Let me tell you a story about a man named Jake. Jake from Longevity Gardens, used to live in Tempe. He came to one of my classes in 2011 at the Desert Botanical Gardens. And he showed me pictures of his backyard. And he says, I want to transform this backyard into a forest. Greg, what do I do? I said, put down woody mulch. Now, I meant woody mulch. He meant woody mulch. He actually went with 3 feet of woody mulch.
Now you meant
6
woody mulch
inches.
like 6 inches, because
Yeah.
I still had your screen share, but 6 inches. And
6
he went
inches.
how much?
3 feet.
3 feet.
He put 200 cubic yards of woody mulch in his backyard. And so he called me over there, and this was over the course of like 3 years, but he called me over there like 8 months, 10 months later after we'd had that chat. And he was showing me his backyard, and there was at least 1.5 feet of woody mulch throughout his entire backyard. This was in February. The last time it had rained that year, whatever year it was November. So November, December, January, February. It had been 4 months. It had been 4 months since we'd gotten any rain. And so I grabbed a shovel and I dug a hole in this woody mulch. And I said, have you been putting water on this? He said, nope. So he had 1.5 feet to 2 feet of woody mulch in his backyard, and it was damp 18 inches down.
It's amazing.
From the rain 4 months earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, I interviewed Brad Lancaster Monday or Tuesday of this week. It's Tuesday. Last Thursday, I interviewed Brad Lancaster, and he gave an example, exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
So the more mulch, the better. I don't think
Right.
there's too much. What you don't want is you want to make sure that the woody mulch doesn't get piled up against the trunks of the tree.
Right.
Because that can rot it away. But other than that, woody mulch, leaves, like that is bring it on. Deb wants to know how go ahead, Janis.
I was just gonna say, Jewel asked what kind of thermometer I was using. It's just one that I got from this is a Craftsman. I can just point a laser. Let's see if you guys can see it. It's just a little laser gun that I could point at the ground, and it gives me a little reading. It's perfect.
It is. They're great. Deb wants to know, do you know how effective straw is when used as a mulch? It's great. Fluff it really good. You just have to use a lot of it. The problem with straw, though, can be if it's not organic. Often what they do when harvesting, they spray it with Roundup or glyphosate to kill it. Then they harvest it because they always want to harvest grains when it's dead. So just know that if you're using straw, it may have glyphosate or some other kind of herbicide on it.
Right.
Just know that.
Candace asks, can essence and soul be used as a drench instead of foliar feeding when temps are too high? Actually, you want to use the heart for sure. So use your heart. And if instead of using the essence and soul on the foliar, if you want to add it to your heart mixture, then yes, you can. You're going to use just a little bit more than what would have been in the foliar because it takes longer for it to get up the roots and in the trunk. So yes, you can. And Sue asks about the slide. She says 1 ounce of soul and 1 ounce of essence versus 1 cap of essence and 3 caps of soul. I'm going to stick with, I'm going to say that she caught a typo. The slide has an older picture, 1 ounce of noble gills, 1 ounce of soul in your foliar, mixing it together would be just fine. So she caught me with a erroneous slide.
Yeah.
Good eyes, Sue.
I'm working with Scott.
Eyes.
I'm a little distracted here. I'm working with Scott here.
Although
him on, so.
And that's the spring. So the slide for spring, I'm looking at my thing. It's 1 ounce noble gills, 1 ounce soul for the spring. Because noble gills is what you're using to encourage flower growth.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the summer, you're going to go to 1 cap of essence and 3 caps of soul. So the nutrition schedule has 5 milliliters of essence, 15 milliliters of soil. It's actually a little bit more than that because the caps are a little bit more than 5 milliliters, but it's pretty close. So it's 1 cap of essence and 3 capsules of soil for these summer months, because you're going to be, that'll help your proper growth for that. So sharp eyes, Sue, thank you very much. And
Oh
Deb says, would you do both drench and foliar on the same tree in the same month? They are different methods of feeding. We have 3 different types of feeding our trees in our nutrition program. One is granular fertilizer, granular organic fertilizer. This goes into the soil and it stays there and it feeds the trees slowly over a period of time, gives them all sorts of good stuff. Different, but also good, is drench feeding. This is the heart. This is the humic acid that goes in and is going to feed all the soil around the roots with good bioorganic, life-giving energy. And that's drench feeding. And then we're going to talk about foliar feeding, which is when you feed in through the leaves. It's different elements, different applications. And yes, you would do, if you can do all 3, do, but if you can only do 1, do granular. If you can do 2, do drench. If you can do all 3, do foliar.
I did see a question in here. Do avocado trees actually grow successfully in the low desert? That's a really hard question to ask. Let me put it to you this way. I've probably seen 1,000 of them go in the ground and maybe 1 or 2 lived. So extreme planting and tree care in order to get that to happen. There are a couple in town, but it is a rarity.
Yeah, we start with the beginning trees, and an avocado is more advanced. So we don't do a lot of energy on helping people grow avocados because it's an advanced level. You need to have the right microclimate. There's a lot more.
There is one. I did plant one at the urban farm that is still alive. It's in heavily shaded, gets 100% shade throughout the year, especially in the summertime. And it's grown 6 inches. It grew 6 inches in 4 years. So, extreme planting, extreme fertilizing, and extreme shade until it's established.
Right. All right, we've got a bunch of questions. Let's try and get them before Scott gets in.
All right.
All right, that one is done. Kyle has a question with a problem here. Planted a couple of apricots, a peach, 2 apples from the instructions, and I'm assuming this was just this last year. Been doing the regular foliar feeding and the bioflora exactly per our schedule, except missed 1 day, the tax day. One of the apricots is doing poorly and the other 4 are doing great. They get the same watering schedule, not sure what's doing. And by doing poorly means that the tree has dying leaves, dry and yellow.
All right, so I'm going to jump in here. You're going to take a picture up close and a picture standing back 8 feet, and you're going to send it to fruit trees, plural, at urbanfarm.org, and I'll give you 2 cents worth.
Yeah, Kyle, it's different. It depends. We need to see kind of what that all looks like. So sending us the details in the picture is the best way to do that. We can give you some more feedback because it could be a lot of different things.
Hello,
and it
Scott.
could just be not thriving.
Good day. Should I get my headset or can you hear me well enough?
We can hear you great, sir.
You're awesome. Good. Hi.
That's what we want.
So Scott, we are in our monthly fruit tree chat. There are 76 people here joined us tonight to listen. And so far we've been talking about when to fertilize, what to fertilize, foliar feeding, drench feeding, and that kind of stuff. And I wanted to check in with you. You've been sending me pictures of Lily harvesting peaches off of second-year trees. And so what I wanted you to do, if you wouldn't mind, is to give us a sense of how you go about planting. Now you're in San Diego, so it is a little bit different climate, but give me an idea of your planting, watering, and fertilizing process.
Well, one of the keys is water. You said it right there.
Mhm.
So I have gently sloping land where I plant my trees, and I build water harvesting beds on the contour. And I plant the trees in the middle of the bed, and
Mhm.
then I have spaces in between the trees at 6 foot high density spacing, where I'm doing other things like artichokes, for example, and also green tea. When the trees get bigger, Camellia sinensis will love that deep shade. So one of the big things now is we have to think about grabbing every bit of water that might come across our property and putting it in the soil under our plants.
Amen.
If you have a more sloping location, what we call the V bed is a very valuable tool. You can extend the sides of the V bed up the slope to collect rainwater and bring it to the individual tree from a much larger area. If you have an essentially flat piece of ground, we often recommend a basin around the trees. And I was telling you about planting my pecan trees, Greg.
Oh, yes.
Pecan trees come bare root with a 3 foot long
Root,
root.
taproot.
You know, the taproot is like gigantic.
Yeah.
And we could not get more than about 2 feet down in the soil. So we brought in a excavator,
Oh my gosh.
and we went in and we tore out some of the old roots from the eucalyptus that was in our area. And the holes ended up being 4 feet deep. The gopher basket cages were 4 feet deep. And then we had, my daughter literally got in the holes to fill in and compact the soil around these bare roots. And then we formed a basin on the surface because it's at a gently sloping area where we can contain the water that we're now irrigating those with and mulch heavily inside that basin. So one of the biggest things is anytime we're planting a tree, in the imaginary best possible place to plant a tree, it's still going through stress because maybe it was in a pot or maybe it was bare root. There's a few other exceptions. Sometimes we get trees that were fresh dug and bald, but that's like old fashioned. I haven't seen one in years because it's so much work. But we'll do it with some really big trees as an example.
They call that ball and burlap when it comes wrapped in burlap.
Yeah.
Interesting, Scott. I don't know if you know this. There is a massive pot shortage right now. Our citrus supplier ordered pots in August of last year, and she still has not received them. So you might go into nurseries this year and see, they call it B&B or ball and burlap, where they dig up the tree and they put it in a burlap bag.
We actually got some citrus trees last year that were balled and bagged, but in new plastic rather than burlap.
Oh, interesting.
I was like, oh, now that's kind of interesting. You know, it's like, very interesting. But so back to what your listeners are working on is anytime we're planting a tree, especially a tree, because it's generally for a long period of time that's going to be growing.
Yep.
So we really want to do a good job. We want to make a big hole as we can afford to, because many times we need to correct the soil balance for what we want to grow, right? Like one part of the very top of our hill of our farm is just DG, sea layer soil, where they graded to make the pad for the house.
DG is decomposed granite.
Right. And so we've been fighting in that area, and now we're refilling holes with a much more beneficial mix to help our new trees get established. Go ahead, sir.
So we've talked about watering and planting. Let's talk about how you fertilize your trees to get them so that, you know, you're a year and a half in and they're producing massive amounts of fruit. All right, a lot of fruit, maybe not massive amounts.
I'm impressed. Let me just put it that way. The cherries just started this year. They're a little slower, but the peaches Oh my goodness. And we're very happy with that. So here's the key. There was a wonderful old gentleman that told me the way you plant trees, you dig a hole, don't do anything but throw that tree in the hole and then
Oh my gosh.
shove the dirt in and water it.
Yeah.
And I looked at his orchard and I kind of went, yeah, that's not my style.
Especially in the climate we're in right now, what that's going to get you is a dead tree.
Probably a 90% probability.
Yeah.
So one of the things here in Southern California that I grow are coffee trees. And coffee trees are really sensitive. So like coffee trees are sensitive in San Diego County, everything you plant in the Phoenix zone is sensitive because it has such a very narrow window of survival. And it's a fascinating challenge. So someone was asking me today, oh, my blueberries, I put them out in full sun. They're not doing very well. Should I?
Oh, yeah, you think?
Blueberries don't particularly like full sun. They would really like to be between rows in an avocado orchard, for example, where they get dappled light. They would be happy as campers. But that's where I also put my coffee trees. That's the best place for them because they have the community or brotherhood. So if
hold on.
Go ahead.
For clarity, Scott, I just want to reiterate, Scott is in San Diego, the San Diego area. Coffee trees and avocados are no-goes here in Phoenix. So just what I want you to be listening for is the process rather than the trees themselves. Go ahead, Mr. Murray.
I apologize.
No, it's okay. It's all good.
It's a fact. In different parts of everywhere, you can grow different things.
Yeah.
You know, up in Flagstaff, very different climate, still pretty doggone extreme. So the reason Greg and I have been debating this extreme tree planting for many years is that's the reality for you folks. So everything that you can do to help that tree along is going to make a huge difference. So Greg was talking about fertilization. I have a procedure of putting a 1 to 2 pound package of very high quality organic nutrition ingredients in every single tree planting hole, including mycorrhiza, propagals, but depending upon whether it's an acid-based chemistry, which is citrus, avocados, coffee and tea as an example, or conventional, we slightly mix differently, but we put minerals in, azomite, which is a Montemore-like clay, which has 100 different trace elements in it. We put kelp, we put a series of different ingredients. The idea being that we're putting this transplanted tree or fresh bare root into the soil, and it needs to grow and find the best food in the world immediately. Right? And so Greg knows my location. Last year we planted in late January when we got our bare roots and we got organized. And in June we had fruit to taste from some of those peach trees. And now with a whole year's growth, with an aggressive summer pruning where I began to structure and shape the trees. So getting fruit from your trees also involves pruning and thinning. And it's another way of balancing the stress on your plant. And actually, don't be at all shy about putting up even a piece of wood or something to shade a new tree from the direct sunlight, especially what we call the 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock quadrant for its first few months, because this little thing came out of a nursery where they were probably all together and just got a little bit like on the top of my head, son. And then suddenly, where'd all my friends go? I'm out in this big field getting buffeted by the wind. Everything that we can do to help those little baby trees is a survival tool for extreme tree planting. Greg sent me a couple of trees a few years ago that were cloned from the only avocado known to fruit in Arizona. And we're very concerned about the Haas avocado variety because it is not heat tolerant. And we're getting into hotter times. So a friend of ours was coming over, and he came by my house and unloaded these 2 pots. One had a tree in it about 3 feet tall, and it was really handsome and cute. And the other had a stick in it that was broken off about 18 inches up.
I actually think it was about 8 inches up, but
Well,
it was a
graft.
stump. Yeah.
Above the graft is the key, right?
Yeah.
And I looked at this tree and I thought, okay, there's some kind of a message in this. And I contacted Greg and I said, well, I got the 2 trees, but what happened to part of the 1 tree? And he goes, oh, that was an accident in the nursery. And I figured if anybody could bring that back, it would be you. And I was like, I'm on the challenge. And now those 2 trees are part of my demonstration of the 6x6 avocado spacing, my high density plan that I use for coffee, avocados, and deciduous fruit to pack the most possible into my particular property. Much like Greg's old property in Phoenix, the urban farm, he had so many fruit trees in a very small space because
81.
81.
We did, before we left, we had a map of the place done by a local landscape architect. 81 fruit trees on the property.
And maybe a quarter of an acre?
Yes. 13,000 square feet.
Okay, so roughly, not a lot of space, but holy moly, you can do it. But we need to make it a whole lot easier for our new plants.
So what are you doing with foliar and fertigation and like that? Getting, because here's the thing, our plants need to eat every day, just like you and I need to eat every day. And I had a lady on Facebook ask me about some grapes that were really struggling. And I said, when did you fertilize them? She said, oh, I fertilized them 4 months ago. So what about liquid and ongoing fertilizing?
Well, plants are very much like us. They like to eat every day. No joke. And if we feed them once a year, they'll survive waiting. Today's the day, the food today,
Right.
But Greg and I are fans of growing cherries. And I've been watching the cherry technology front going on. My wife is very concerned that we were overwatering our new cherries. So we engineered the irrigation system so we could control them separately. But our irrigation system now has been completely rebuilt on our 1 acre with 6 blocks. And we have an automated controller that's controlled over my iPhone.
Oh, nice.
I love it. It's hooked up to Wi-Fi. So I can control and add or take off water or do other functions, and it can report to me. And I have a fertilizer injection system. In particular, there's a product made in France called Dosatron that is the best, I think, in the world. And it's a water-powered pump that sucks out of a vat below it and is adjustable for percentage. And I use these on hundreds of acre properties and just like my little 1 acre property. But what this allows us to do is to give food with the water anytime we want. And it used to be, for example, with avocados, that we fertilized twice a year in spring and fall, never more. And we watered every 10 to 14 days for 24 hours.
Oh, right.
But the funny part is that they were growing in soil that was only 18 inches deep that would be saturated in like 2 hours. And most of that water runs off subsurface. And these are plants that grow in rainforests, right? So they don't want to dry out in between, but this was the thing. You let them dry out, bone dry in between. And they have roots in the top 6 inches that are affected by this. So understanding a little bit about how the tree that we want to grow in our extreme location, be it anywhere now, is figuring out what it needs and figuring out how to provide it. So Greg mentioned foliar feeding.
Hold
Janice?
on. Janice?
I had a question about your tank that you talked about.
Oh, yeah.
How much can somebody expect to spend to get one of those for like home use?
A
obviously-
Dosatron tank, right?
The Dosatron fertigation.
A fertilizer injection system.
Yes.
Right? We're replacing one that cost us $120 that we use for 10 years.
There you go.
That was
And
10 years ago.
yeah.
What are you finding now?
So now on the Dosatron scaled to my size, only a 3/4 inch, not a 2-inch.
Right.
I paid $345. And the other parts in that to hook up and the controller, another $150. So I'm going to be about $600 into this whole system. But with 121 deciduous trees, putting compost on all those trees could take like 10 hours.
Right.
Right? Like, oh, wait a minute. And we want to do it once in a while because we're feeding the soil as well.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can be giving it a little bit of nutrients practically with every watering.
Mm-hmm.
And so now the latest science for our San Diego County requirement, I've been cutting my growers back over 50% of their water consumption, but having them apply it in more frequent, smaller doses, right? So this actually works really well in a more extreme climate like Phoenix, because if you mulch very heavily and you put a little bit of water each day or every other day, like 5 to 15 minutes even, you'll keep that plant at optimum moisture almost all the time. But if you don't have it mulched and the ground can bake in the hot sun, it's going to have a more of a challenging struggle. So foliar feeding is where we can take nutrients like fish emulsion or kelp emulsion to organic ways, put them into a gallon sprayer, spray them right on the plant. The plant will absorb with an 80% efficiency and very rapidly. When we see an immediate need, that's the fastest way to get nutrition into the cellular structure of the plant.
And that's what we talked about earlier called foliar feeding.
Foliar.
Yeah.
So the other, by irrigation water or by direct application of, say, compost, is what we call a soil application. So the efficiency of that is about 40%, and the uptake time is much longer because it has to go through the soil, through the roots, and then up into all the tissue. And when you're applying it foliar, you're literally putting it right next to the photosynthetic tissue. Mm-hmm. So it happens very quickly. So people have been asking me, so where's your scientific research? And I said, well, I kind of out on the edge here and I figured it out and I'm working to back it up now with scientific trials. Mm-hmm. But I saw one recently done with cherries, which blew my mind. So they're growing cherries now, high density. They're also growing them inside high tunnels for very early cherries.
Oh, right.
And what these scientists figured out is every day, if they replace the amount of water that transpired, once they get the soil moist to the level they need, they replace the amount of water that transpired that day based on the heat, temperature, and sun of that day. Let's just say 5 gallons. So that might be an irrigation emitter for 30 minutes. Well, let's see, one of mine, 17 gallons an hour. So let's say 20 minutes and we get roughly 5 gallons, right? So plus they're giving nutrients as much as every single irrigation. And in this article in the National Agricultural Press, there is a term used to describe the results, and it's astounding. And that got my attention.
Oh, really?
Because astounding, that's a little bit better than it worked. Or, oh, okay, we're getting by, right?
Well, yeah. That's what those are the results from Bill this evening. Bill is on this call, and he showed us pictures of his trees planted and foliar feeding, and he's getting I don't know that I'd use astounding, but very good results.
Hey, that's what we want for everybody.
Mhm.
And that's why this class is such an important tool, is to hear from different attitudes, information that helps us sort of sort out what's going on right in our backyard.
Right.
Like that looks like Janis's backyard. It's grown up quite a bit since I was there a couple of years back.
Right.
But I know a lot about that backyard, so I could talk about that, but someone else is just a mile away. We have to kind of understand it. We have to observe it for a period of time. We have to, like, as a farmer, we say it takes a farmer a minimum of 3 years to learn new soil.
Mhm.
Just kind of as a standard, you know. Oh yeah, don't expect that you're going to be hitting everything 100% in the first 3 years, because there's so much for you to learn.
Mhm.
But every one of those learning experiences adds up to doing a better job. And one of the things is environmental stress factors are one of the keys that will harm our, especially our new plants. You know, it's like newly planted trees are a special category of give them the best you possibly can.
And then do better.
Find an old piece of plywood, for example, and make a V and position it in front of the plant so it's not in the full sun for the first 6 months.
Yep.
You know, and
Well, at least for the summer.
at least for the summer is what I was
Yeah.
thinking. But because many of your clients probably picked up trees in January or February,
Yep.
and they're now coming into their first summer. They've sort of done well, but oh my goodness, things are going to get a lot different in the coming 6 weeks.
Yeah, well, and so there's the first 3 steps of shading your tree. And what I found, Scott, was that this handled a majority of them, of the problems with heat on trees. 6 inches of woody mulch, wrap the tree trunk, plant some kind of ground cover. You didn't see it earlier. Janis had taken pictures in her front yard. It was 140 degrees and under, in the sun, and under her green ground cover, it was what, 89 degrees or 92 degrees, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, there it is right there.
Wow.
Yeah. And so
Whoa.
that's on the left, it's just straight dirt. On the right is what, 6 inches down in woody mulch.
Yep.
Yeah.
So imagine the stress reduction of that for that tree.
Mm-hmm.
While it's dealing with the above ground part that's living in this 100+ degree temperature. So a really big part is also to think about feeding your trees lavishly. This is my new word for feeding my trees. I want to feed them lavishly. I don't want them to want for the food to grow and do their thing.
One other thing that's going to do is that's going to have them live longer.
Exactly.
The trees will live longer that way. Yes.
Yep. And they'll be stronger, especially when you think about a human child, 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old. They really need a lot of support during that period of their lives. Then they get a little bit more independent, walking around and sassy. And then they're like us, really a trouble thing. So our plants are much the same way. In those first 3 years, we got to be thinking about all the really nice things we can do for them. Like that mulch that Janis just showed us.
Yep.
The temperature probe is the piece of the puzzle. But as you also were talking about your shading strategy for new trees, we just took coffee protection off after a whole year of growing, and then we opened it up over 2 months, so that it slowly hardened off these trees to full sunlight, and then we finally take it off and take the baskets off and flatten them to be stored for next planting projects. And then now it's going to be time to go back and give them another ground feeding, because we're still fixing a few leaks in our new irrigation panel, and we're not running the nutrients through it just yet. But it's working, and replacing our irrigation system has upgraded the performance, water flow and pressure by 200%.
Well, it's going to save on wasted water too, especially with where you're at. You're in San Diego, you're in Southern California, you're in California, which are on tier 2 drought restrictions.
Yes.
All
of our lawns are going to be turned off in the state this month.
Good. Sorry, lawn people. Good.
I'm proposing a plan to plant carbon drawdown succulents on them.
Nice. Nice. So
we have a lot of jinx.
Oh,
Greg.
Man. We got some questions here, Scott.
Good. Oh, I should in the chat too.
We'll read them. Go, Janis.
Jennifer says, how long are we watering for regular deep watering in the low desert during summer and winter?
Boy, that's a question to answer because we don't know what your soil's like.
We actually go in depth in this during our planting, watering, and fertilizing webinar. It is available in our fruit tree program. If you have missed it, we're going to have another version of that later this year in September. But what you're really trying to do is to get to a depth of 2 to 3 feet, make sure that's moist down there. So that's where your goal is. It goes down faster and straighter in sandy soil, and it spreads out and goes down slower in clay soil.
Right. And the key is that once we get the water profile moist, then we don't have to keep pushing the water through there. We just have to replace the water that the plant is using to live day by day. So we're getting more and more clever about really minimal irrigation, but maximal fun for the plant.
It's a lot different. I mean, Scott, that's really cool, but that's a lot different than what we've been teaching. We've been teaching once a month and twice a month in the summer. So I think we're going to have to do some investigation on that to be able to clarify how we're going to be teaching that in our area. But that's definitely something that we're going to have to do some research on, Greg. Especially
for your area. And on the strategy of once or twice a month, you're guaranteeing that the plant has a deep reservoir to live off of.
Yeah, and not once a month in the winter, twice a month in the summer, with the caveat that, and the reason I teach it that way, Scott, is that I have had so many people overwater their trees to death.
Yeah.
So if they're watering them once a month in the cold season, so that's November, December, January, February, and twice a month in the warm season, and then watching your trees so that by June 1st, if your tree's drooping, you know it needs more water.
Yeah, it's not a static business, right? No calendar can live with how weather may change. I'll just mention, we had a tremendous heat event in April this year where we had 100 plus degrees for about 3 days, and it changed the physiology of a lot of our crops. One of our midsummer peaches went off as these little tiny 50-cent sized peaches, and they were incredible. But now we're observing all these changes, so we have to be dynamic, and the heavy mulching is one real key about it, because you check under that, like Janis did, the temperature's lower and there's much more moisture there naturally, and plants need moist, not soaked.
Yeah. So we have some questions here that I want to get to. There's 7 questions here. This one specifically for you, Scott. This is from Alicia W. in Gilbert. Can we trim or shape fruit trees right now, or is there a certain time of year?
This is actually coming into one of the best times of year now in our modern fruit tree management. We call it summer pruning. And certain fruit trees like cherries and apricots have almost given up on winter pruning because it opens up sores that heal very slowly and causes more disease problem.
On which trees?
Specifically apricots and cherries in commercial cultivation.
Mhm.
But with what your clients are doing, summer pruning is probably one of the most important tools, because what we have is the plants are running this new tall growth. And unless you want a really big tall tree, you can cut that back and shape the plant to be a much more compact production system. And that's where summer pruning is considered to be one of the great tools. And now winter pruning is just being recommended for what we call correcting structural defects.
That's a really good way of putting it. Yeah.
Certain things you can't really see till they get all bare from their leaves in the deciduous period. And then you go, oh, look at that cross branch. That's going to be a problem in 2 years. But the summer pruning, the beauty of summer pruning, you could start doing it now all the way into August. But what we want to do is allow at least 2 months for the plants to grow and heal after the summer pruning. And it's amazing, the response on the plants. And it also forces fruit production in the coming spring season.
Oh, nice. All right, cool. And if you've purchased something in our fruit tree program, shopping cart, you have access to our membership site, and there is a document called Backyard Orchard Culture that talks about summer pruning your fruit trees. All right, Scott, it's getting late here. It's 9:10. So I want to get
really quick.
I want to get to dinner. So let's see. Melinda says, I just started putting down wood chips around my trees in Litchfield, Arizona. I kept it away from the trunks of the young trees, but did put it against the trunk of a 20-year-old teepoo tree. Is that okay? Yeah, I'd say it would be fine. What I've found is that for established trees, the woody mulch doesn't, especially in the desert, doesn't bother it.
Their bark is thicker.
Yeah.
For a thin bark tree, I wouldn't do it, but for the stronger bark trees, you could.
Yeah, perfect.
Gail says, could thick grass and weeds work in my orchard? Only 6 inches of woody mulch at the base of the trees. Or are you suggesting 6 inches of woody mulch in the whole area where the trees are?
Well, if your water crisis is really bad, we're doing our whole orchard, because the water situation is so bad. We want even reduce the transpiration from the open areas.
Mm-hmm.
And it also helps because it cools the whole area and changes the temperature profile. But the grasses do a very good job as well. You know, that we would call a natural cover.
Yeah.
Or a living mulch.
C says, to be clear, it's okay to plant ground cover under the fruit tree like potato vine, sweet potato, and flowers as a mulch cover, and they are not a problem competition for the tree. And will the watering of the ground cover be different from the tree? So here's what I tell people. See, we plant sweet potatoes and cowpeas because they're on the same watering schedule. If you plant a plant underneath the tree and it requires watering every day or every other day, that's not going to work.
Right.
Thoughts, you two?
No. Basically, it's matching up pairs, right? Like we're doing our pecans. Those big basins are 6 feet across, so we're planting pumpkins in the basins, and they'll get an hour and a half once a week, and figure it out. You know, we think the pumpkins will do well. They'll deep root. There's 6 inches of mulch.
Yep.
So they'll probably need a little bit more at the transplanting phase, but once they get established, I think that they'll really do a beautiful job.
Yeah.
There were some comments in the chat room about sweet potatoes working and cowpeas not sprouting. In actuality, this cowpeas are probably just starting to sprout for a lot of people. Jewel, if you're not seeing any now, just give yourself some time. The sweet potatoes pop up first. For me, it's my Mexican primrose. And then when those start to kind of slow down, the sweet potatoes are picking up. And when those start to slow down, the cowpeas are picking up.
It's a symphony.
It is.
There you go. There you go.
All the instruments don't always play at the same time.
Yeah. Last question. One popped in right before we're closing up here. Carol says, regarding summer pruning with citrus trees that have fruit, what do you recommend?
Oh, that's easy. So on the very top of the tree, you'll have the new, what we call water growth. And usually you can cut back about 18 inches of that. There's very rarely any fruit up in that area. And you're giving it a little stimulating haircut. You're not necessarily changing the whole structure of the tree, but if there are any dead branches or really branches coming down touching the ground, what we call the skirt, if that interrupts your irrigation flow, you need to lift the skirt a little bit. But just try that green, tall, straight water growth, 12 to 18 inches, and your plant will be like, oh, that felt great.
Right?
I do.
Right.
I do want to touch on Jules' thing here. It doesn't relate, but I'm finding slimy things. I think they look like little snakes, worms. They move like snakes. I Googled it and they just say they can't harm pets or people. That's true. I used to, Jewel, in Phoenix, I used to have about 4-inch long snakes. I think they call them blind snakes, that was about the size of a pencil lead, that I'd find in the yard occasionally. They were the coolest dang things. Yep, she says yes. So I want to share my screen real quick here, Miss Janis.
All yours.
And then I want you to, once I'm done with this, I want you to pull up our patron page again. But let's see here, share screen.
I'll just tell people while you're playing with that, observe what's going on in your garden every day, because it changes and it's amazing. And there's a lot to be learned there. Oh, nice.
Right. So
this peach is called Ava's Pride. It only requires 100 hours of cold chill. And she sold those to a chef for $4 a pound.
Oh, nice. Wow. So that's in your backyard. And this she is Lily. This is your daughter, who is basically co-running your farm with you, right?
Our farmer.
Yeah. She's amazing. I have known her for, oh my gosh, 15 years, maybe.
Quite a spell.
So,
but we're excited by this because they also tasted extraordinary.
Right. Well, and the more you fertilize them, the healthier the soil is, the better they're going to taste.
And the more things you fertilize them with that are the building blocks of flavor. That's where chemical nutrition can't do it for me.
All right, so we had a high of 78 people here. 65 of you are still there. We had a high of
88 people here.
88?
Right.
Oh, thank you. Scott, tell people just how quickly how they can get a hold of you if they're interested in farming consulting or help with their farm.
So our farm in San Diego has a website. It's called edgeofurbanfarm.com. And that gets you to our website, shows you what we're up to. And I'm Scott A. Murray at sbcglobal.net, which is my email. It's just my name, Scott A. Murray at sbcglobal.net.
Excellent.
And I make my living being a farmer and a farming consultant, and it is so much fun. I can't tell you.
Growing food for people. Nice. All right, Miss Janis, one more slide and then we'll be out of here.
I am unable to share. My computer is going a little weaky. I'll just tell everybody, please join us for donations. Go to urbanfarm.org/support. Or are you unshared?
I am unshared.
It's not letting me do it.
All right, well, here we go.
There you go.
There we go.
Now, upcoming events, July is going to be our our water harvesting month. And we're also going to have a Just Growing It Yourself webinar. So we got a couple of really cool things coming up in the next month. Watch out for that.
Yeah, and if you could support us, throw a little love our way, you can just give us a donation at urbanfarm.org/support. And if you want to join our patron education program, that's urbanfarm.org/patron. Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Scott.
Nice to see you, folks. Have a good day.
All right.
Yeah. July 14th, our next tree chat, we're going to be talking about summer watering. Is it enough?
Oh my gosh. All right, cool. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Thank
Good
you,
night,
Scott.
folks.